Here's your HFY story. The most dangerous substance in the cosmos runs through human veins. The galaxy had known terror before. Stars had gone nova in unnatural synchrony, empires had burned, and the black ships of the Ziran Scourge had once eclipsed entire suns. But nothing had prepared them for this. It began on the medical decks of the Ishar Republic's flagship, Radiance Eternal, where biologists in hazard suits stood frozen over a simple glass vial. Inside swirled a dark red liquid, glinting faintly under sterile light. Not plasma, not nanites, not any known bioengineered weapon. It was human blood. They had brought it aboard out of morbid curiosity after the skirmish at Vath Prime, where a single Terran rescue team had fought off an armored division of Vern war beasts, barehanded. 3 humans had been captured alive for questioning. Only one survived long enough for a blood draw. Dr. Keshran, a stoic insectoid scientist with 3 centuries of fieldwork, had been the first to notice the anomaly. "It's alive," she whispered, scanning the results. "Blood is always alive," her assistant replied. "No, not like this." Human hemoglobin bonded with oxygen in ways no known protein could match, efficient beyond theoretical limits. Like it was forged for extremes, their immune cells didn't just defend, they hunted. The antibodies reconfigured themselves in real time, adapting mid-battle against invaders. But the real horror wasn't in the cells, it was in the chemistry. In humans, adrenaline, a mundane molecule elsewhere, was a catalyst for transformations so violent they looked impossible. Heart rate spikes, muscle fiber reinforcement, pain suppression, oxygen efficiency doubling in seconds. It turned frail bipeds into predators that ignored wounds, fatigue, and reason. No other species in the galaxy could choose to become a Death World apex predator at will. Keshran's voice shook as she reported to the council. "We have found a Class Z bioweapon. The most dangerous substance in the cosmos runs through human veins. They carry it everywhere, all the time." When the recordings of human combat leaked, wars paused. The footage showed Terrans fighting in vacuum with torn suits, dragging comrades through acid storms, screaming with laughter while outnumbered 10 to 1. Not berserkers, not mindless beasts, but tacticians who could think faster in the heat of battle because of that red liquid fueling them. The Ziran Scourge's warlords demanded a strategy meeting. The result was unanimous. Do not engage humans directly, ever. But it was too late. The humans had learned they were feared, and that knowledge mixed with the same blood that made them unstoppable. Admiral Yalshar of the Vern Empire summed it up in a single trembling statement. "They do not need weapons, they are weapons, and they are already here." If you want, I can expand this into a longer, multi-chapter HFY epic where the galaxy scrambles to contain humans, but ends up needing them in a war they can't win alone. Would you like me to make that next? Alright, here's the next chapter continuing from where we left off. Chapter 2, Quarantine Protocol. The Ishar Republic did the only thing that made sense. They locked the humans away. The 3 Terran survivors were transferred to Fortress Medicae, a deep-orbit research station, built into a hollowed asteroid, surrounded by automated turrets and layers of containment fields. No living being had ever escaped from it. Or so they thought. Dr. Keshran's orders were clear: study the humans, identify weaknesses, and find a way to neutralize the biological threat. She obeyed, at first, but days into the research, the situation began to erode her sense of certainty. The youngest human, a female identified as Lieutenant Mara Cade, spoke to her through the containment barrier. "You're wasting your time, Doc," she said one day, after another failed attempt to denature her blood. "Why do you say that?" Keshran asked. "Because you're thinking like this is some accidental evolutionary fluke. It's not. We're built for this." Keshran dismissed it as bravado, until the security feed from Containment Cell 3 showed the impossible. The oldest human, Corporal Darnell Rios, had been gravely injured during capture. Every other species Keshran knew would have gone into metabolic shutdown. Instead, Rios' heartbeat increased. His wounds began knitting together in hours, not days. His body diverted resources, regenerated tissue, fought infection without a single injection. When Keshran ran a scan, she found his red blood cells had changed shape, literally altered to slip through damaged vessels and deliver oxygen directly to starving tissue. Adaptive biology at a speed that broke every known medical model. But the real problem wasn't in the cells, it was in the behavior. Mara Cade had been studying them, asking about the guard rotation, watching the door seals, timing the meal deliveries. "You're not going to break out," Keshrin said during one late-night inspection. "I don't need to," Mara replied calmly. "You're going to open the door for me." The next morning, Fortress Medicae was on full alert. A Verne raiding fleet had entered the system, warships with enough firepower to level the station in minutes. The automated defenses could hold for a while, but not long enough for reinforcements. Keshrin stood in the command deck, trembling. The station's meager garrison couldn't win. The Verne weren't here for conquest. They were here for the humans. Behind her, Mara's voice came over the intercom from her cell. "Let us out, Doc. You know we can stop them." Keshrin's 3 hearts pounded. Every protocol, every instinct screamed not to unleash what she had just spent weeks containing. But outside, the Verne ships began powering their spinal cannons. And she realized with a cold shiver. The most dangerous substance in the cosmos wasn't just human blood. It was the will inside those who carried it. "If you want, I can make Chapter 3 the moment when Keshrin finally opens that cell door, and the humans show the galaxy why their blood is feared. This is where the story turns into a high-intensity battle scene." Alright, here's the next part from the Predator's perspective. Part 3, The Predator's Council. The Elder returned to the stone hollow before the moons had fully risen. The hollow was no ordinary den. It was the seat of the forest's law, a ring of boulders older than the rivers, where the oldest predators gathered when territory lines blurred, when a rival pack encroached, or when the balance of the hunt was threatened. Tonight, every predator was there. Saber wolves with frost on their fur, razor beaks with talons as long as a cub's arm. Even the great tusked murderboars had come, their breath fogging in the cold night air. The Elder stepped into the ring. Silence fell. It spoke, not in the soft mimicry of prey species, but in the deep, layered growl of its kind. Each word was more vibration than sound. "A stranger has entered the forest." Low murmurs rippled through the gathering. The Elder raised its head. "Not prey, not predator, guardian." That word, a guardian, made several predators bristle. Guardians were a myth, a story mothers told their cubs, beings who would throw themselves between the helpless and the jaws of death, not for blood, not for debt, but because something in their heart demanded it. The Elder continued. The young one challenged it. The guardian did not flee. It faced death with no claws, no fangs, no pack. The challenge was answered not with fear, but with fire. It paused, letting the growls fade to stillness. "We will not hunt it, nor will we allow it to be hunted. This is the law of the hollow." The tusked boar rumbled a protest. "Why spare it?" The Elder's eyes narrowed. "Because it shields what is not its own. A creature that does this cannot be measured by hunger or strength. Its kind will come, and if they are like it, then the forest will belong to them long before they take it." One by one, the predators bowed their heads. Some in respect, some in fear, all in agreement. The human, unaware, slept that night beneath a hollowed tree, while around them, the most dangerous predators in the forest kept silent watch. "If you want, I can make the next chapter jump to a scene where the human meets the cub's mother and learns the predators have started guarding them from other dangers. That's when the human finally realizes something strange is going on." Here's the next chapter, where the human meets the cub's mother and begins to suspect the forest has changed. Part 4, The Mother's Debt. Dawn in the forest was usually a dangerous hour. Shadows clung to the ground, and the night's hunters were still prowling while the day's hunters began to stir. The human knew this. They'd learned it the hard way during their first week stranded here. But this morning was different. No rustle of wings. No stalking shapes in the mist. Only the steady breathing of the cubs curled against them in the hollow tree. The human stretched and winced. Sleeping in armor, if you could call a patched jacket armor, didn't do wonders for the back. They glanced at the cubs, still asleep, soft ears twitching. A deep growl rolled through the trees. The human was on their feet instantly, stick in hand. It was lower than the growls from last night, but heavier, older. The cubs woke, froze, then bolted past the human toward the sound. The human's breath caught. Charging after predators was not generally on their survival checklist, but then they saw her. The cub's mother. She was enormous, all sinew and scar tissue, her fur streaked with the pale marks of old battles, eyes the color of molten gold locked on the human. The cubs barreled into her legs, yipping in their own language, telling the story of last night in frantic bursts. The mother listened, and then she stepped forward. The human tightened their grip on the stick. Instead of attacking, the predator lowered her head until her massive snout was inches from the human's chest. She inhaled deeply, once, twice, then exhaled a breath hot enough to mist the cold morning air across the human's skin. Her gaze softened. Then she did something that made the human's knees lock. She stepped aside, exposing her flank, an unspoken gesture in predator culture: trust, invitation. The human blinked. "You're welcome," they murmured, feeling ridiculous for speaking to a creature that probably couldn't understand. But it did understand, more than the human knew. From that day on, the mother followed at a distance whenever the human moved through the forest. No scavenger dared to circle, no hidden predator dared to stalk. The human thought they'd simply earned the mother's gratitude. They didn't realize yet they had been claimed. If you want, I can take the next part into a more dramatic twist, where the human finally leaves the cub's territory, only to discover that predators from other forests are watching them now. Would you like me to go in that direction? Alright, here's the next part, where the human leaves the cub's territory and discovers the protection follows them. Part 5: Eyes in the Trees. The human hadn't planned to stay with the cubs forever. They'd been stranded here for almost a month now, long enough to know where the streams were drinkable, which plants wouldn't kill you, and how to spot the telltale movement of something that wanted you dead. But the forest was bigger than the Cubs Valley. Somewhere out there might be a way back to their people. So, one morning, before the cubs woke, the humans shouldered their pack, such as it was, tightened the laces on their boots, and slipped away through the fog. At first, everything was normal. The familiar paths gave way to new ones, moss thicker, air colder. The scents were different too, sharp, metallic. By midday, the human realized something odd. They weren't being hunted. It wasn't just luck. On a death world like this, everything hunted, but no claws scraped against bark. No sudden bursts of wings startled the canopy, not even the shrill calls of warning birds. It was as if the forest was holding its breath. They found the first set of eyes at dusk. High in the branches, a massive feline shape, its fur blending into the leaves. It watched in utter silence, pupils wide, tail twitching once before vanishing into shadow. Then another. On a ridge, a tusked predator, its breath steaming in the cold. It didn't charge. It didn't flee. It simply watched. By the time the human made camp, they'd counted at least 6 encounters like that. Different predators, same behavior. Watching. Not approaching. Not attacking. It was unsettling in a way even being hunted wasn't. That night, as the fire burned low, the human heard something move at the edge of camp. A low growl, not threatening, but unmistakable, rolled through the dark. Then, from the blackness beyond the firelight, a massive silhouette emerged. Not the cub's mother. Not the elder from the council. A predator the human had never seen before, its fur like midnight oil, its eyes reflecting the flames in molten amber. It stopped just outside the circle of light and spoke, not in words the human understood, but in a rhythm and tone that was unmistakably deliberate. A warning. Then it melted back into the night. The human didn't know it yet, but word of the one who stood had traveled beyond the forest. Predators from far territories were coming, not to kill, but to see for themselves if the stories were true. And not all of them agreed on what should be done with such a creature. If you want, I can make the next part be the first real confrontation, where a predator from another territory decides to test the human, forcing the forest's predators to intervene. That's when the stunned everyone payoff hits full force. Here's the next part, where that outside predator finally makes its move, and the forest reacts. Part 6: The Test. The second night beyond the Cubs Valley, the humans slept light. Too many strange eyes had been on them during the day. They woke to the sound of something massive moving through the undergrowth. Not stealthy, purposeful. The human sat up, stick in hand, heart thudding. From the tree-line emerged a predator unlike any they'd seen. It was leaner than the elder, with longer limbs, its fur striped in jagged patterns that broke its outline in the moonlight. Its eyes were pale, almost white, and they locked on the human with a predator's focus. It stepped into the clearing, slow and deliberate. No warning growl, no feint, just a direct approach until it stood a dozen paces away. The human realized what was happening. This wasn't a hunt. It was a test. The predator lowered its head, circling. The human turned with it, keeping the stick between them. Their pulse hammered. It lunged. The human didn't run. They shifted sideways, planting their feet, jabbing the stick at the predator's chest. It wasn't enough to hurt, only enough to say, "I'm still here." The predator halted, its breath steaming in the cold. It tilted its head, as if weighing something. Then a roar split the night. From the trees above, the elder dropped like a boulder, landing between the human and the striped predator. The ground shook. From the shadows, the cub's mother emerged, hackles high, fangs bared. And from every direction, branches, ridges, shadows, other predators appeared, dozens of them, different species, different territories, all united in one thing, forming a wall of teeth and muscle between the human and the intruder. The striped predator froze. Even it wasn't foolish enough to challenge all of them. It let out a low, dismissive chuff and melted back into the forest. The human stood frozen, stick still raised, trying to process what had just happened. Around them, the predators held their ground until the last echo of the intruder's footsteps was gone. Only then did the elder turn to the human, holding its gaze for a long, silent moment. The message was clear, even without words. "You are ours." And the human realized, it wasn't just the cubs. It wasn't just one valley. The entire forest had claimed them. If you want, I can make the next part jump into a galactic twist, where alien explorers land nearby, expecting an easy study of primitive wildlife, and instead witness predators defending a human as if they were a monarch. That's where the legend could go from forest myth to interstellar shock. Here's the next part, where outsiders arrive and see the legend in action. Part 7, When the Sky Fell Again. It started the same way it had when the cubs first met the human, with the sky tearing open. This time it wasn't thunder. It was engines. The human froze mid-step, eyes scanning the tree-line. The predators around them, the elder, the cub's mother, and a scattering of others, lifted their heads in unison. None bolted, none growled. They were waiting. A silver shape descended through the clouds, sleek and alien. It settled into a clearing 100 paces away, the air shimmering with heat from its thrusters. The human's breath caught. A ship. The hatch hissed open. 3 figures emerged, tall and narrow-limbed, their armor the color of bone. Scanners blinked on their wrists. They spoke in sharp clicks, their voices carrying through the trees. Target life form located. Primitive ecosystem. Proceed with sample retrieval. The human's stomach sank. They knew that tone, clinical, detached, the kind used when something wasn't considered someone. One of the aliens raised a weapon, short, ugly, and pointed directly at the human. That was when the forest moved. The elder stepped out first, its sheer size making the aliens falter. Then the cub's mother. Then the tusked boars. Then the razorbeaks. Then the tree-stalking cats, the serpents thick as tree trunks, the packhounds with bone-crushing jaws. They came from every direction, silent but unstoppable, until the human was surrounded by a living fortress of claws, fangs, and muscle. The aliens froze, their scanners chirping frantic warnings. Multiple apex signatures, density off-scale, recommend immediate retreat. One tried to raise their weapon again. The elder took a single step forward, and the alien's nerve broke. In less than a minute, the ship's hatch sealed and its engines screamed back to life. The predators held their ground until the craft was nothing more than a glint in the clouds. The humans stood in the center, still processing what they'd seen. The most feared hunters on this world had just defended them, not like prey, not like a pet, but like royalty. Somewhere out there, Those aliens were already transmitting their report. Do not engage the human on the predator world. The predators are not hostile, unless you touch the human. And in that moment, the legend of the one who stood left the forest and began its march across the stars. If you want, the next part could jump to the aliens' perspective as they try to explain this to a galactic council, and no one believes them until they show the footage. That's where the stunned everyone moment hits galaxy-wide. Here's the next part, shifting to the aliens' perspective as they try to warn the galaxy. Part 8, the council laughed. The ship limped into orbit, its hull still rattling from the hasty retreat. Inside, the 3 expedition members stood before the calm array, their armor streaked with dirt, their faces pale beneath their skin patterns. They uploaded the field report, attaching the raw footage from their helmet cams. The message was transmitted on an emergency band. Subject, Critical Advisory, Predator World 7B Delta. Do not attempt retrieval of human specimen. Apex predators of all classifications exhibit unprecedented cooperative defense behavior toward the individual. Hostile reaction guaranteed if specimen is approached. Recommend strict planetary quarantine. Hours later, the feed reached the Galactic Council. Representatives from 100 worlds crowded the chamber, their voices echoing in a mix of scoffs and disbelief. A member of the Voratel delegation, a species evolved from glass sand scorpions, clicked its mandibles in amusement. You expect us to believe the apex predators of a death world protect prey? Cooperation among rival hunters? Preposterous. Another from the Zelenth Empire sneered. If this human truly commands the respect of such beasts, then they are not prey, they are predator, and predators can be tamed. Then the footage began to play. The council chamber fell silent. The first clip showed the human alone in a clearing, armed only with a stick, facing the striped predator. The second showed the elder's arrival, massive, snarling, its landing shaking the ground, followed by the tide of predators closing ranks around the human. The final clip showed the alien team retreating to their ship while dozens of apex creatures simply watched, until the ship was airborne. When the recording ended, no one spoke for several seconds. Finally, the Voratel delegate asked, voice low, "What happens if someone kills the human?" The expedition leader didn't hesitate. "Then the predators will stop defending, they will start hunting." The chamber stirred uneasily. By the end of the session, 2 things were clear. 1. Predator World 7B Delta was officially quarantined. 2. Every intelligence service in the galaxy now had orders to learn more about humans, how one had ended up there, and whether more existed. Because if one human could unite a death world's predators, the galaxy wanted to know what an entire species could do. If you want, the next part could switch back to the human, finally meeting another human who's been sent to extract them, and who warns them the galaxy now sees them as either the most valuable ally, or the most dangerous weapon alive. Here's the next part, where the human finally meets another of their own kind, and learns what's coming. Part 9, The Extraction. 3 nights after the alien ship fled, the human was sitting beside a small fire, sharpening the end of a new spear, when the forest went still. Not predator still. Something else. The elder appeared first, stepping into the firelight. Behind it, the cub's mother and a half-dozen others took position, watching the treeline, not the human. Then came a sound the human hadn't heard in weeks, boots on soil. A figure emerged from the mist, broad-shouldered, armored in matte black, carrying a rifle slung low. A helmet concealed their face, but when they spoke, the voice was unmistakably human. Azura Locke, Terran Recon Corps, you're coming with me. The human blinked, disbelief warring with relief. You're real? Azura's visor tilted toward the predators. They've been keeping you alive, haven't they? The human glanced at the wall of fangs and muscle around them. You could say that. Azura stepped closer, lowering their voice. Listen carefully. Your face is on every intelligence screen in the galaxy. The Council has labeled you a high-value anomaly. Some want you as an ally. Most want you as a weapon. The human frowned. A weapon? I've barely survived out here. Here's the next part, where the human finally meets another of their own kind, and learns what's coming. Part 9, The Extraction. 3 nights after the alien ship fled, the human was sitting beside a small fire, sharpening the end of a new spear, when the forest went still. Not predator still. Something else. The elder appeared first, stepping into the firelight. Behind it, the cub's mother and a half-dozen others took position, watching the treeline, not the human. Then came a sound the human hadn't heard in weeks: boots on soil. A figure emerged from the mist, broad-shouldered, armored in matte black, carrying a rifle slung low. A helmet concealed their face, but when they spoke, the voice was unmistakably human. Azura Locke, Terran Recon Corps, you're coming with me. The human blinked, disbelief warring with relief. You're real? Azura's visor tilted toward the predators. They've been keeping you alive, haven't they? The human glanced at the wall of fangs and muscle around them. You could say that. Azura stepped closer, lowering their voice. Listen carefully. Your face is on every intelligence screen in the galaxy. The Council has labeled you a high-value anomaly. Some want you as an ally. Most want you as a weapon. The human frowned. A weapon? I've barely survived out here. Exactly. You united apex predators without even trying. That doesn't happen. Ever. Whole civilizations have spent centuries trying to control Death World fauna, and failed. You stood once, and now this planet is yours. The words hit harder than the human expected. I didn't do it for power. I did it for the cubs. Azura's tone softened. Doesn't matter. The galaxy doesn't see why you did it, only that you can. A roar rolled through the trees, low and distant. The elder turned its head toward the sound. Others shifted restlessly. Azura glanced at the human. We're out of time. If we leave now, we can slip past their satellites before they know you're gone. The human looked at the predators, the cub's mother meeting their eyes with something like understanding. Leaving meant safety, but it also meant the forest, the only place where they'd felt both vulnerable and protected, would never see them again. The human tightened their grip on the spear. If I leave, they'll think I abandoned them. Azura hesitated. Then maybe we take some of them with us. The elder rumbled, a sound that could almost have been agreement. If you want, I can make the next part be the daring extraction itself, where the human boards a ship with predators, and the first contact between them and human technology leaves the galaxy absolutely stunned. Here's the next part, where the predators and human arrive at a space station, and the galaxy sees the legend firsthand. Part 11, Docking Day. The station hung in orbit like a steel moon, its hull bristling with docking arms and sensor arrays. Azura's shuttle coasted in under escort, 2 defense frigates flanking them. The comms crackled every few seconds, Council patrols demanding confirmation. Override codes, medical quarantine protocols. Azura answered none of them. When the docking clamps locked, the human expected tension from the predators. Instead, the elder sat like a living statue. The cub's mother curled around her young, razor beaks preening their feathers as though this were simply another forest clearing. The hatch hissed open. The first sound was silence. Dozens of station personnel stood frozen beyond the airlock, engineers, dockhands, security officers, all staring at the figures inside. Then the elder stepped out. Its paws hit the deck plates with a deep thud. It lifted its head, molten eyes sweeping the hangar, and began walking, not skulking, not stalking, but with the slow confidence of a creature that feared nothing here. The cub's mother followed, young pressed close to her legs. Then came the tusked boar, the tree cat, the razorbeaks. Only after they had emerged did the human appear, spear strapped to their back, walking casually at the center of the group as though this was the most natural thing in the world. A security officer's voice cracked over the station PA. Those are Death World apexes. They should be tearing us apart. A dockhand whispered back. They're protecting the human. Someone further back murmured, that's impossible. The predators ignored the stares. The elder moved until it stood directly before the ranking officer, a thin reptilian alien with trembling frill crests. It lowered its massive head until its nose almost touched the officer's chest, inhaled once, and then stepped aside so the human could pass. Not as a leader pushing through a crowd. As a sovereign being escorted by a royal guard. The station's internal feeds caught every second. Within an hour, The footage was already spreading across the net. By nightfall, 1 billion beings would have seen it. Azura leaned in toward the human as they walked. Congratulations, you've just made every military strategist in the galaxy very, very nervous. The human didn't answer. They were watching the Predator's reflections in the polished deck, watching the way every step they took made the crowd part like water. Somewhere, far beyond this station, the forest was still alive. But here, in the heart of galactic civilization, the pack had grown. If you want, I can make the next part be the political storm, where factions fight over whether to befriend, isolate, or eliminate the human, while the Predators make it clear they have their own opinion on the matter. Here's the next part, where the political storm hits, and the Predators prove they're not just bodyguards, they're a message. Part 12, The Council Reacts. The council chamber was a cathedral of glass and gravity manipulation, suspended high above the city ring. Delegates from 100 worlds sat in their platforms, drifting like petals around the central speaking floor. At the heart of it all, a hollow hovered in the air, the station footage. The Elder stepping aside for the human. The cubs pressing close. The Deathworld Predators forming a living wall around a fragile biped. The footage looped. And looped again. Delegate Surin of the Mak'Kari Republic slammed a clawed hand against his console. This is an existential threat. If those things can be tamed, what happens when humanity breeds them in numbers? Ambassador Vren of the Kavari Collective hissed through their respirator. Tamed? Look closely. That is not taming. That is allegiance. Others muttered, some about danger, some about opportunity. From the upper tiers, a whispering chorus. If one human can earn the loyalty of an apex pack, what if they are the only species capable of it? Imagine them as peacekeepers? Imagine them as conquerors? The noise rose until the chamber vibrated with competing visions. Then the doors opened. The human entered, flanked by Azura and 2 station marshals. Behind them padded the Elder, its talons clicking against the crystal floor. The cub's mother followed, then the Razorbeaks, then the tusked boar. The chamber fell into silence so total that the hum of the life support vents was deafening. Chairperson Vor cleared his throat. Human, do you understand what you've done? The human looked around at the countless alien faces. I gave them food. I protected their young, and they protected me. Surin sneered. You cannot claim this is innocent. You've created a bond that should not exist. The Elder's ears flattened. Slowly, deliberately, it stepped forward, placing itself between the human and Surin's platform. Then, with a deep rumbling growl that shook the glass floor, it looked up at the Mak'Kari delegate and bared its teeth, each one long enough to pierce bone in a single bite. It did not attack. It did not need to. Vren leaned back in their seat. It seems, they murmured to no one in particular, that their loyalty is selective. The chamber's silence now carried a weight, a warning. By the end of the day, 3 factions had formed. Those who wanted the humans' pact for military alliances. Those who demanded their isolation in the name of safety. And those who feared the Predators were not humanity's weapons at all, but humanity's equals. If you want, I can make the next part be the first real attempt to separate the human from the Predators, an attempt that does not go the way the instigators expect. The Predator's great head lowered until its molten amber eyes were level with mine. The cubs whimpered behind me, their tiny talons gripping the back of my torn jacket. Every instinct screamed at me to keep them hidden, keep myself between them and those teeth. But the Predator didn't pounce. It inhaled, slow and deep, its nostrils flaring as if memorizing my scent. Then it made a sound I had never heard before from such a creature, a low, vibrating chuff, almost gentle. Its gaze flicked to the cubs, then back to me. The air between us felt like a taut wire. And then, without warning, it stepped back. The ground trembled under its weight. Its massive tail swept the snow, clearing a path. The Predator turned its head toward the dark treeline and growled at something else. A shadow moved there. Many shadows. The real danger wasn't the Predator at all. And with a flick of its ear and a rumbling snarl, the apex hunter had just declared that we were on the same side. Do you want me to continue with the fight against what's coming from the trees?